The Eeveelutions archetype has been an incredibly fun deck across multiple formats. Pretty much any format that had an Eevee card and multiple evolutions of it had some version of Eeveelutions in it. Utilizing cards like Rainbow Energy or Hyper Devolution Spray so you can switch back and forth between evolutions. At the very least, this archetype gives you multiple weaknesses that you can hit that your opponent may have. But as you've noticed from the lavender background and the name of this video, there are some standout evolutions across the years as well, those being Espeon and Umbreon. So this video is going to look at Espeon throughout the TCG. Espeon's first TCG appearance was for the Neo File 2. For reference, this is the Neo File 2. You can clearly see through the front cover an Umbreon, but when you open it up, you'll actually see that there's an Espeon and an Umbreon in there, as well as some unknown that spell out the word Neo. And then that matches the artwork that's on the back that have Espeon and Umbreon at these ruins. Beyond the promotional Neo File 2, it was also released in the Neo Discovery set, and it's nothing groundbreaking, but keeping in line with the earlier jungle versions of the evolutions, you do get an attack for 2 colorless, that way you can mix it into already existing evolution decks. However, the preferred version was the Holo Rare from Neo Discovery, which had 10 more HP, a double colorless attack that you could mix and match into other evolution decks, but with a better secondary attack in Psychic, which does 30 damage plus 10 more for each energy attached to your opponent's defending Pokemon. And this is one of 2 gimmicks that Espeon will get that recur over and over again within the TCG. This card was so preferred, actually, that along with Umbreon from Neo Discovery as well, you would run 2 Espeon, 2 Umbreon, and then maybe 1 copy of a Flareon or a Jolteon, depending on your local metagame. And those 2 alone would be enough to create its own archetype. So really the deck was just Espeon and Umbreon at the time, even though it was still referred to as Eeveelutions or Eeveetron. This build ran very smoothly because of support from Porygon 2. Its energy converter power could make sure that Umbreon or Espeon had the correct energy whenever you needed it. The Japan exclusive Versus series gave us Sabrina's Espeon, which has one of the few Espeon artworks that I don't love. I really just don't want to look at this thing. But very few Pokemon in the Versus series were actually usable. However, Sabrina's Espeon has a really solid attack in Psywave, especially for a basic with 60 HP. Will's Espeon from the same set has much more pleasing artwork, but much like Sabrina's Espeon, it's pretty solid for a basic Pokemon, but still nothing to write home about. With Neo Destiny, we got Dark Espeon, which had a free retreat cost and could utilize special dark energy to deal an extra 10 damage with Gouge. In almost every set that there's an Espeon, there's usually also an Umbreon counterpart. However, this is one of the few exceptions. It was an in-set rule that a dark type Pokemon could not have dark in its name, and thus there was no Dark Umbreon. Into the E-Reader era, we got the Aquapolis Espeon, which could be a really great late-game sweeper for Psychic decks, especially when paired with the Dark Espeon to spread damage and then clean up later. However, because of the way the rotation worked, the Neo-only format and the E-Reader-only format didn't have very much overlap. As per the usual with the release of a Pokemon movie, Japan got an exclusive themed half deck that corresponded with that movie, and they got some character-owned cards, one of which was Annie's Espeon. If you remember from the Latios and Latias movie, the Team Rocket agents are named Annie and Oakley. This is Annie's Espeon. Again, we see Espeon with Psychic, which is dealing additional damage for the amount of energy on the defending Pokemon. Because it is a character-owned card and technically kind of part of the Versus series, it is a basic, and this is a great basic Pokemon, especially for a theme deck. With the release of EX Sandstorm, all of the evolutions were back in the same set and the same format. However, Espeon was clearly the standout amongst the new versions. Yes, you could switch between them and hit for technically 5 different weaknesses now. However, the rest of the evolutions didn't really have much synergy with them, so Espeon was better off by itself in a Psychic deck, again being a late game sweeper. The energy curve for this format meant that most Pokemon in the active position were going to have at least 2 or 3 energy already attached to them, plus whatever your opponent's trying to set up on the bench. So you could bring this Espeon out, throw down a Psychic and a double colorless, and you can deal massive damage with Energy Crush. The Delta species evolutions had much better synergy with one another, plus they could utilize the famous Holon engine to get the trainers and the energy that you needed to switch back and forth between these to hit the weaknesses that you wanted to. Again, Espeon and Umbreon were the standouts in this deck. Because of their power or body, they could heal your own Pokemon while also damaging your opponent's Pokemon. While the original 3 evolutions served as your main attackers, Espeon was more important to sit on the bench and use that Delta Heal every turn, providing support to the rest of the deck. However, if you needed to hit a Psychic weakness, you could easily pull out Espeon and get a Psyshock off. Delta Species and Unseen Forces were huge sets when it comes to Eeveelutions. They created probably the most powerful version of Eeveelutions thus far. Just look at each of these EXs. They all have their own Poke Powers that help control the game board so well. Espeon EX was no exception. Its Poke Power introduced this new gimmick that Espeon cards would have in the future, which was devolving your opponent's Pokemon. Not only that, but it had 2 attacks that would punish your opponent for retreating a weakened Pokemon to the bench. You could Snap Tail it, and even Psyloop would punish your opponent for overusing Pokemon tools and stadiums. Espeon EX played a huge part in the 2005-2006 competitive scene. Jimmy Ballard took an Eeveelutions deck all the way to 2nd place at Worlds. This was his exact deck list. He's got 2 Espeons in there, 2 Umbreons, 2 Flareons, and then the Jolteon and Vaporeon in there. This deck was so versatile. You could hit so many weaknesses. Using the Pidgeot in this deck, you could get the exact cards you needed super fast. Surprise Time Machine was key for this deck. You could devolve your Eeveelutions and then re-evolve them to abuse their Pokemon powers over and over again. So you could stack damage on your opponent's Pokemon, re-evolving Jolteon EX. You could devolve multiple Pokemon by restacking your Espeons. Espeon EX showed back up at the 2007 World Championships as part of a brand new archetype called Absolutions, which would stack damage with Absol EX and Jolteon EX, and then use Espeon to devolve your opponent's Pokemon into lower HP mons, which would knock them out. Eeveelutions were everywhere in this format. Flareon EX paired with Ariados to make the Flariados archetype, which was stupidly fun to play. Jolteon EX paired up with Flygon EX to make a really annoying spread deck. It was truly the golden era of Eeveelutions, and the format went straight from extremely powerful Eeveelution cards to extremely rare and expensive Eeveelution cards. Competitively, Espeon Star could be really useful situationally, but it was mainly a huge collector's item. You could only get this card through Pokemon Organized Play. Every Eeveelution got a Star variant card that you could get through Organized Play. This one in particular cost 50,000 player points. For reference, here's how many points you could earn for doing various activities within play, and these points did vary. You could get even more points for participating in like city championships, the same for state, regional, national, and world championships. However, you could only get these cards during the 06-07 season. After that, they were no longer available. So if you're wanting to get your hands on an Espeon Star that's in decent condition, it's gonna run you about 700 bucks. Into the Diamond and Pearl era, we got the Majestic Dawn Espeon, which became part of the brand new Eeveelutions archetype. Although this one was not as strong as earlier iterations, this one still saw Espeon and Umbreon as core members. With the addition of Leafeon, the deck could now hit for 6 potential weaknesses on your opponent, and with Glaceon, it gave you an alternate water type to use that had a different weakness itself. But because you only had 4 Eevees in the deck, and Umbreon and Espeon were the only ones that had passive support in their abilities or bodies, those 2 were the only staples of the deck, with the other Eeveelutions rotating a bit depending on the metagame. Overall, this iteration of Eeveelutions found itself stretched a bit too thin and never really worked its way into the competitive scene all that much. In yet another Japan-exclusive promotional deck, we got Lucian's Espeon. Much like Annie's Espeon, this was actually a pretty great card considering that it was a basic Pokemon and it was a theme deck card. Eeveelutions did get a bit of a boost with the Undaunted set. Not only did you get a new Espeon that had 90 HP, an alternate art reprint, and 2 really great game controlling attacks, Espeon also got a Prime version. Espeon Prime could use the attacks of any other Eeveelutions you had in play as long as you had the correct energy, so you could pair it with multiple Eeveelutions with a bit of a potpourri energy mix in your deck and utilize Espeon's 100 HP to become a very versatile attacker. Not much to say about the Dark Explorer's Espeon other than that it was a decent support card, so let's just move along. Plasma Freeze was probably the most recent iteration of Eeveelutions that really hit the competitive scene as Eeveelutions, even though they have been included in other decks. This was the last one where the focus was on each of the evolution cards themselves. Each Eeveelution was a Team Plasma card, meaning that it could utilize the Team Plasma Trainer engine at the time to get the cards that you need into your hand. And although all of the Eeveelutions appear, the only ones I really remember seeing in competitive play were Flareon, Umbreon, Espeon, and Leafeon, although every now and then you would see a Jolteon in there to hit some EXs. Each particular evolution had its own niche to fulfill within this deck. Leafeon was your primary early game attacker, Flareon served as a late game revenge killer, and Espeon was your sniper. If your opponent was trying to hide some Pokemon on the bench, you could pull Espeon out and get some Shadow Balls off really quick to KO some basic Pokemon on the bench. With Breakpoint, Espeon found itself as a key card in spread decks once again, with its ability to devolve your opponent's Pokemon and knock out those lower stage evolution cards that have lower HP when the damage has already been stacked on them. Like every other EX and GX in the modern era of the TCG, this one also came with a full art variant. Speaking of which, Espeon GX of Sun and Moon was not far behind, this time with 5 different artworks to choose from, my personal favorite being the Sun and Moon Black Star promo version, so let's stick with that one for now. Aside from the other variants, this one also came as a jumbo card as part of the Espeon collector set. Espeon GX was part of a deck that seemingly came out of nowhere and rocked the 2017-2018 season of Standard play when it was paired with 2 versions of Garbodor and Drampa GX. This deck was all about control and punishing your opponent. So Garbodor's Garbotoxin could shut down all abilities and decks that relied on abilities, while Trashalanche on the other Garbodor would punish your opponent for using too many Poke Tools during the game, which were huge during this format. Drampa made sure that your opponent didn't lay down too many double colorless or other special energy cards because they were just going to get discarded. And Espeon could keep your opponent's active confused, while Drampa and Espeon both had high HP and heavy damaging attacks under the right conditions. Although Garbodor was already seeing a lot of play before this deck really hit the scene, in the 2017 regional championships in Seattle, that's when the Espeon and the Drampa came out in full force and ended up taking first place at the championship with the build by Aaron Rosbicki. After this, the deck's popularity exploded and you saw it all the time online, especially since the best counter for other Garbodor decks was another Garbodor deck, especially with Espeon GX mixed in there. In Lost Thunder, we got another really great support Espeon. Nothing too amazing, but that Energy Crush can be really clutch late game for certain decks. And we have the recently revealed Espeon Deoxys Tag Team GX card. All of these tag team cards have amazing, fantastic artwork by Mitsuhiro Arita, and this one is no different. Gotta love that artwork. This tag team will be included in a special theme deck centered around it as a counterpart to an Umbreon tag team card that was also recently revealed. Although the card is powerful, it's not as overpowered as some other tag teams, probably because it is being released in its own deck and it's meant to serve only that purpose, but even still, it's a really cool card. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Espeon cards over the history of the TCG, as well as how Eeveelution decks as an archetype have done over the years. I'm currently working on an Umbreon counterpart video to go up with this one this week that will also focus on how the Eevee cards have developed over the years in helping support those Eeveelution decks. Let me know down in those comments what your favorite Espeon cards were, if you have experiences using any of them competitively, and let me know what TCG history videos you'd like to see next. So until next time, guys, bye.